If you like this channel, hit that follow button. If you're new to this channel, hit that follow button. Be a part of this community, right? Exclamation for social and chat for social media. We got Twitch Twitter. Well, we do have Twitch, but we have Twitter where we tweet things that you know what's going on. Discord, heart and soul of the community. Be a part of our Discord. Also, if you have like a boost, right, one of those nitro boosts, use it on the server. We could use it to get to back to level 3. So if you could help us out that way, that'd be great as well. TikTok is where you find funny videos related to the channel, and YouTube is where you find the VODs, right? If you miss anything, like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube channel. Consider becoming a YouTube member, hitting that join button, supporting us that way if you like getting this content 7 days a week. All right, thank you so much. We'll move on to our next topic, and that is hopefully it's something a bit different, right? And I hope you guys like this topic because I'm always trying to find like unique things to talk about rather than like the same old, which we usually do, right? So okay, a new AI system was recently developed called DALL-E. At least I think that's how it's pronounced. DALL-E. DALL-E. This program creates images based on text inputted by the user. An example would be typing scuba diving teddy bear, and the program could actually create that photorealistic image on its own. However, users have noticed that DALL-E has racial and gender biases. For instance, entering flight attendant would only produce images of women, and CEO only produces images of white men. This is because the system draws upon publicly available images from across the internet to train the AI. Those images have biases baked into them. The group that created DALL-E, named OpenAI, has received a lot of criticism for this. But is that fair? Should AI have to accommodate everyone? Should OpenAI have to be to put in painstaking work to make sure progressive sensibilities are built into their systems? So yeah, you've heard discussions about racism in tech, and a lot of people denying that's a thing. But as an example, right? Like part of an article that I read gave us many examples of people putting in these search terms and a very specific set of data of images are being returned. I'm curious what happens if you put in criminal, right? So let's. I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. Let's go to Black American Made.
Yeah, I mean, this specific AI is a symptom more than like and the issue itself. Like we understand the issues of when there is like a lack of representation. Overall, we understand the issues of like of inherent bias that exists not just in tech but in our everyday society and the way we frame things, the way we shape things, and the way people see Black people. So should there be correction made? Absolutely. But it's like it's not because of the AI. It's because of the larger implication. There's a bigger issue behind it.
Thank you, Kyle.
I believe that these AIs are just inherent into the maze because they're imperfect because they're made by humans who are imperfect. It's called unconscious bias for a reason. You don't understand how your mental heuristics, those shortcuts your brain makes to make life easier, so you don't have to like think about breathing every breath. Your brain will just do things automatically because it just humans are good at recognizing patterns and integrating it into their life. So if you notice a lot of things, you might intentionally pick up lots of bad habits, and that can form into racist thoughts. And then if you're a bad actor, it can lead into racist action. I use this AI for some degenerate furry shit. I was like, because I wanted to look at some degenerate furry shit to see what would happen. Because I saw someone on YouTube looking at it this for their personas and see if they can make some. So I said, what, I could probably do that too. And it was kind of shit art. Like it's not all the way there yet. It's not as good as Prime was making it out to be. It's not photorealistic. It's not that good, but it's okay. Um, But you know, like sometimes these AIs can be racist, they can be sexist, they can be homophobic, they can be Islamophobic and transphobic. But that's just because they're getting so much from people that are not reliable to be progressive. Like I remember on that time, like I think in like 2015 or something, they had like on Twitter they had this AI. I think was Gabby or Tammy or something like that nature, and they had it open to the public, and then like within 24 hours they made the AI like say that Jews did 9/11 and that we should like genocide gay people, and so they had to literally kill the program within 24 hours of it being live on Twitter. And so because like so many people were just giving Tammy whatever the AI's name was, like so many racist and horrible things to say, and they were just taking that and internalizing it. So I think that's just what's happening. But to the second part of the question about whether we want people from the PC and F community to make AIs, no, because
I
they'd just be
never.
worse. They'd be worse. It'd be worse. They'd be anti-capitalist. They would say everyone who has more than $10,000 needs to be lined up on a wall and shot. So no, I don't want them to be making AI either.
Okay, wow, wonderful. And I think you were using the wrong AI when you said you looked into this. The DALL-E that requires you to pay for it. Like it's not just
Oh,
open. I
okay.
know what you. I was
The
looking
free
into
one.
it last night because I wanted to try it out
Oh yeah.
myself. But like, there's this
You
other
mean the
one
Hugging Face one?
that uses DALL-E. I'm not, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like it's called like Night Force. I don't know what it is, right? But it's somehow related to it, and it was about artwork, right? And you
Yeah,
could
the
choose
free one,
different.
yeah, with the artwork, yeah.
Yeah. So that's
That's
not
the
the
one
one
I
I'm
use,
talking
yeah.
about. The one I'm talking about, you like the for the images it puts out, they look absolutely photorealistic, like real fucking people there. But okay. Let's go to our friend DeAndre Pace.
Uh, I think this is a non-issue. I mean, I hate when we take a look at articles and computers and stuff, and we just turn
Hey,
everything
Pace, can
into a
you
race
increase your
into a.
volume a little bit? Maybe I can just turn you up though.
Yeah, you're a little,
Okay,
you're a
yeah. Let me
I
little.
don't
move
know.
this closer.
He's low to everybody, not just me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I tried to go fix it because I thought my microphone was doing that buzzing thing, so I tried to go fix it. So maybe I messed up the volume on it when I did
Well,
that.
I turned you up in Discord. It's better now.
All right. Well, like I said, I think this is a non-issue because I I hate when I go and I'm looking at articles and everybody's trying to make something about race. This has it's a useless feature. If anything, it's a statistical flaw because it just targets the likelihood of a woman being a CEO, which is much less likely for a black woman, much less likely for a white woman than it is for a black man than it is for a white man. So I don't see a real problem with this here. It's just them trying to make something racist and virtue signal when they don't need to.
Okay. We'll get into it. But thank you so much, Pace. Fanatic, please.
Beautiful,
Real quiet.
beautiful.
My
This is
bad.
the
So the
most that
PC
makes
dev.
sense. Go ahead.
Well, no, we know better. We know better.
Ain't
The
nobody
PC
gonna
dev has
do
struck
Mac like
again.
that.
Yet again, another non-issue that they've made into an issue some sort of magical way. Obviously, we can understand why there would be like the cases of these things finding like the information that it is because uh here I just pulled up the numbers. I just did really quick search. 83.9% of flight attendants are women. So is this thing going to probably find the women? Yeah, most likely. 92.6% of the CEOs in the Fortune 500 are white men. So is the thing going to generate the things that are going to be resembling what it finds? Probably. Typically, when you're like doing some sort of machine learning or AI or anything like that, you see it's like typically going to be done based off of like it's going to be searching the web in order to get references in order to do what it's doing. And so yeah, that's what it's doing, and that's how it's coming to these things. And the Google search it's doing, if it's looking for Fortune 500 or just your CEOs, yeah, they're most likely going to be white men because that's mostly what's going to come up because that's mostly what's there. Now, why would you attack the people who created the AI over this? Because you're a leftist and you just need somebody to actually attack. Because this doesn't make any freaking sense.
Oh Lord.
This fanatic is most cuddly. Thank you so much for that, fanatic. Let's go to our friend Pyro.
Okie dokie. So here we go. Um, I think everyone's covered the fact that, like, with the way the AI takes its input, it's just drawing on the fact that Google is in itself pretty fucking racist in the way it depicts these things. And the way I'll phrase it like that is for the second part. I think we can hold the people who make AIs like this and, like these in the future a little bit. Like, they're not like the biggest fucking villains on the block, but like you can hold them a little bit accountable for it, is because it's not like Google is the only website that you can gather from when you need to import sources for your site, right? Like, you can use other browsers like DuckDuckGo or some shit like that, where if you do look up these terms in their image selection and shit like that, the image get feedback is actually pretty diverse and spread out. So it's like there are other browsers they could use for that, and like I will fault them on the fact that they're only drawing their sources from one fucking source, that being Google. But I think the broader issue is the fact that, like, we do live in a diverse society, whether you want to be leftist about it or not, and the fact that, like, we've come quote unquote some far, yet like the searches are so diverse when we know for a fact they don't just put out people who are in those fields, to me is a bit ridiculous, especially when it's coming from Google, the people who do like the leftist banner changes for every fucking month in a goddamn year, even though you don't know when. So for them to be like, yo, no, we're not just going to do that, it's a bit of an excuse to be like, well, statistically, there are this many people in the field. Well, yeah, but Google doesn't just give the statistics when you look for images. They give you a broad general search. You're getting art, you're getting, concepts, you're getting pictures of actual people, you're getting stock photos. So, like, for me, that's no different. It's Google's fault, but like they should take account that there's other servers.
Much GSU, please.
Thank God I'm here after that take that Pyro just laid out. That was idiotic. So Pyro, unfortunately, you may not know, but the internet is based off what's called SEOs, a lot of the way that these searches work. And you have these search engine optimization, that's what SEO stands for. And these terms are getting bundled to page rank views and things like that. So as people are more affluent, they will embed keywords into their pages so that when you search these things, their results come up at the top. And then as that association is made for this word is leading to this page, that page gets ranked higher. And then over time, those things become like more and more associated. And this is what happens, right? So if you have a structure that is powerful in terms of money or whatever, they're going to embed with their content. It's going to be the result of certain search phrases. When you have some AI that's crawling the web, it's going to find those same things. So I don't think Google is racist. I don't think Google AI is racist. Those things are revealing like the underlying power structure that exists. So I don't think those things are racist at all. I long thought like technology would solve our problems, right? Like we see women getting access to the workforce and everything. All of this is based off technology, though radical people will tell you it's based off social progress. But I do think that this is going to be a big problem, and I'm not sure how to solve it because the data profile that we're dumping into these like AI algorithms, but AI algorithms is massive, and there's not really a good way to embed these social justice beliefs outside of not using that type of technology and trying to like code it in a more primitive type of way. So if we have things that are ingesting large data sets, it's going to inherently have the biases that exist that produce that data set. There isn't a good way to remove the biases that exist in the data set that's being consumed. So yeah, it doesn't exist. But yeah, these things aren't racist. These things are revealing like the reality of our world. So when they make the Twitter bot and the Twitter bot starts being racist and homophobic, that's because those artifacts exist in the data set that was used to create it. And it's not a problem of the developers. It's just a problem of the reality that we live in.
Thank you for that. And just someone put it in the chat an article. I think it was Mogwai. I put a chat article in the chat talking about this bot. I had never heard of this Twitter bot. This is fun. Its name is Tay, and they had cleaned up the data set to GSU. They cleaned up the data set when they created it, right? So it was fine. But then it started.
It interacted with people.
Yeah, it interacted with people. Yeah,
Yeah.
and eventually it talked about how. Oh, I shouldn't even say it. Should escalate it real quick. Let's go to Mordecai, please.
So I'm going to be the first one to go on record and say, all welcome Skynet. Let's get down and really lick boot for our computer overlords that are incoming, because the second it finds 4chan, we're fucked. But in the end, intelligence has to be informed, and this is an artificial intelligence. So this AI is a mirror into who we are as humanity. The bias we have is a mental shortcut due to lack of information or experience. This AI has no experiences beyond what we're informing it with. So back in the 1950s, before Third Encounters came out, we saw little green men. Now we're seeing gray aliens. So perceptions and what's going to be put out through this AI are going to be varied based on what our experiences are. And our experiences can be very negative in a lot of ways. But either way, I'm pretty sure in the future, when I search for food after this AI comes online, I'm just going to get top 10 chicken spots.
So much. Finally, Taj.
Yeah. I just wanted to pivot off of like what GSU Gambit said, talking about SEO. I used to work way more in marketing than I do now, but the SEO part is like super important. That responds to like what search crawler, like web crawlers, like think that you would respond well to. So I'm assuming, I don't know how this works. I don't know AI coding. I don't know GitHub shit. I think that these AIs like respond to what we, the consumer, would probably find the most valuable. So say if you typed in cute girl, it'd be really weird if the AI pulled up a picture of Frida Kahlo or Rosie O'Donnell. It's gonna do more like a Kim Kardashian or just like general features that what the broad American psyche believes to be beautiful features or cute features on a girl. With that being said, I think that we could probably put like, I don't want to say training wheels, but kind of like bumpers. You know how like when you bowl, like to prevent like a bowling ball from going to the side, like it has bumpers. So maybe we can put some sort of buffer on there to be like more quote unquote woke, whatever that means, or however we consider it. And I'm open to that discussion. I think that's definitely possible. But the AI like saying like putting in things that might be kind of racist, like I think that's just like the AI responding to what it believes we would find the most viable. It's a reflection of ourselves, and sometimes we just don't like that as consumers.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say the SEO thing, it gets even worse than most people even understand. If somebody with sufficient money wanted to take over, like let's say I wanted to go buy Fnatic, and right now Fnatic probably dominates Fnatic because it's like a different spelling and stuff, so it's a unique thing, right? So it's a unique artifact. So it's likely that if you type in Fnatic, you're going to find all of Fnatic's content, which is why it's great that Fnatic has like a unique name. Well, what companies can do is, if the way that a lot of these bots and page works is, if you search for a term and you choose a different result, it deprioritizes the relationship between what it previously would have thought was a good relationship. So if you search for Fnatic and you some kind of way start clicking everything that's not Fnatic, but inherently the bots will start to say, well, this doesn't rank to this well. So what some people have done on YouTube is they've used certain search terms that they want to be associated with our content. And then if you click away or you don't use certain content in those results, then the bots will start to page rank other things higher. And that's how people like take over SEO. So like the SEO thing is disgusting. Like, and there's no good solution to it because it is the best, kind of what Todd was saying. It's the best way to like, if you were building a system, you would think, hey, when people search this, if they click this or they don't click that, it's probably good if I like prefer that people see those results that are clicked more often. And the problem is like people with lots of cash can start to gamify that. But yeah, the SEO problem is gigantic, like really, really gigantic.
So
the question I have to ask, like to you leftist psychos, what if the bot was doing things at a disproportionate rate? Would that make you happier? For instance, if I told the bot to look up NBA players, and it produced an equal amount of white people as it did black people, would you think that was a success?
So, I guess that's just me.
Yeah.
These
would have to be like
you go first, Prime. You're the only person that didn't get your opinion out. Like, I'll answer Fnatic after you go ahead. Cause like,
you can go first, then I'll.
Yeah, for me, probably like if it was just cause like for the way we, especially how we know like searches can go out. Like, yeah, if they were just both equal and the bot was like, yo, we're taking into account like the biases and shit. and the programmers actually took those things into account, like
That
Gambit was saying, the search and shit. Like, yeah,
no,
motherfuckers.
but there doesn't exist a world where programmers can take those things into account. So the problem is like people don't understand like there's human intelligence and there's like AI, and they aren't the same at all. And what the problem is the data set that you're feeding it and the patterns that it is creating aren't programmed
But
by
like
the
when we're
individuals.
so when we're talking about like the AI, the DALL-E shit, like I'm not talking about Google and shit right now, where it's like based on your
No, I'm
input.
talking about any AI. You have to not
Feed it the
use
data.
certain things of AI technology to embed social justice in it. It isn't that you can just create a social justice AI bot. You have to, because you can't, like I wish I understood it more, but you can't code your way into, with this word, give you more pictures outside of brute force. You can't do it using a representative sample, because like everything that Fnatic said, like there isn't a representative sample that's going to give you social justice. So you can't have a
So
bot.
so like again, because like you keep right, don't understand. You're saying like when they created this AI, when they gave it like they said feed it Google, they couldn't feed it other websites and other servers that have different search data like that, where like
If
some
it's
images
gonna
do come up non when you search up flight
Yeah,
plan,
and
and
a
some
good.
in
websites don't come up female. When
in
you search up
in a
certain things, they
very
don't come up
small
black.
scale example, yes, you could control what it's consuming. But if it has to interact with individuals online or it's crawling the net, now the data set that it's going to consume is bigger than your control. So you can have an AI bot that you build in your house that only uses the things that you fed it. But if you release it to the broader internet, like the Twitter bot, it's going to interact with people. It's going to build associations, and it's going to replicate those associations in its results. And
But
like
when we
Fnatic
talk
said,
about stuff like
if you Google NBA players and you start to see flowers, are you going to be satisfied with that world?
all right, but like when we talk about things like the DALL-E bot, because like I've looked into a little bit of like this art shit right now, because like it's automated. My fucking part of my job and part of my income, so like I'm looking into it. Seems like you put in keywords and it generates shit based off of these searches. Now like when we look off of these searches and whatnot, I'm gonna completely level with you. I'm taking like when you look up shit in Google and when they put in that shit, there's like all of the data and all of the interaction with people that Google has. Are you saying that there's no way for the fucking producers or whatever, the programmers of DALL-E, to be like, okay, Google is this way. Now we can take another server like DuckDuckGo, which is a completely different way, and input both of these things. So like you get kind of more of a balance, because that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about making some SJW bot
The
that
problem
knows
is you
and
the
whatever.
problem is you consider DuckDuckGo and Google materially different, and you think Google is inherently evil. Like that's the source of your problem. It isn't
You know,
that
Oh
I
no,
DuckDuck.
I'm picking a
people.
website I use on the daily, which is Google, and a website I have no interaction with, so there's like really no way they can kind of get my search data, which is DuckDuckGo. When I inputted the search attendant for flight attendant and like shit like that, CEO, the fucking photos
No, no.
on DuckDuckGo are
Wait. The
much
way the
better.
internet isn't built isn't solely based off of your search history. It's based off a collective of
Exactly.
everybody's search history. So even if you don't use DuckDuckGo, the biases of the data that DuckDuckGo is crawling and the biases of the people that are searching and what they click on, which changes page ranks, none of that has to do with you. So there is content that's going to be delivered to you based off like your location and things like that. But the
Okay,
majority of the content isn't.
regardless of the fact, like seeing as how like it seems like, based on location, it seems like this data set from DuckDuckGo seems to be a bit more diverse, and we can ask around and ask other people. Is
That
there no
doesn't
way?
exist. There's
Oh,
no
just
one that
just
thinks that.
It's not.
so just
You know, I
consider it an
Yeah,
aggregate
it's
of
based on
information. It
I'm
is
finna go to
literally an
DuckDuckGo and
aggregate of
Google.
information.
Oh, I just did. I just
So
went to DuckDuckGo
there
and
we
went to
go.
CEO, and it's like mostly white folks. Like,
you know, I see the problem. This
what
bot
are you
is
saying?
explaining. This bot is explaining the problem with you leftists. Is that you assume that everybody should all have equal outcome to everything. You type in CEO and you should have an equal proportionate number of black CEOs or women CEOs to white CEOs and men CEOs. When if you go by just statistical data, that doesn't exist. You cannot apply equal outcome to every single thing that you put in there. So when you're what Gambit's talking about here is when you go and you type something in on Google in the search bar, it generates what other people have been looking for, and that's what Google has become more familiar with that particular image or word to be. So if I go online right now, I type in the word Ark, I might be thinking about the Ark of the Covenant, but because I didn't specify, it's going to show me Ark the video game, because that's what most people are looking for when they type in Ark online. So you cannot just give equal outcome. I don't understand why you just can't be more specific when you type it in
I,
the bot to generate the image.
I'm talking about the specific
I think
bot
that
and its
good.
image generation. I'm wondering about like how it gets its input of an image. And so far, Gambit, I'm gonna say like you've educated me a lot on this. Like I'm looking into it a little bit more, and I'm looking into specifically how DALL-E gets their image base, so I can certainly say what the problem is. Because like I'm still hung up. Like I get Google's a big place. There's a search, but like if that's the only place they're getting it from, that would be my problem. If that's the only database they're tapping into, that would be part of my problem. If like that's how they
It's
get
more
the
than
majority
it's
of
more
it.
than Google. But okay, I'll try to answer this.
I think that maybe
So
there
all
should.
right,
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
that's okay. You know what, Taj, you can go first. And then I'll go after it.
Okay. I am so sorry about that. Yeah, all right, I'm kind of like sucking myself off right here. I think that the idea of like having maybe user filters in there, just the same way where you can go on Google and type in not safe, or you can like when you're doing an image search, you can be like safe searches on or off, right? Maybe there should be like maybe like a woke option where 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 say like if you did type
Come
in
on.
something like CEO or family or something like that, it'll have like more diversity that's in their kind of like bumpers. To my understanding in coding, and I don't know coding that well at all, like you can have variables where say like, okay, if X variable, then X variable, or then Y variable comes out. So say if you type in something like
So
CEO or
Just
family
kill the rest of
or
the internet with
so
that idea.
But I'm
so
saying
Taj, I'm
woke
happy you
is
or
a
said that. Hold on, hold on,
variable
hold on, hold
definition.
on. Wait 1 second. Wait, I'm really happy you said that. So when I would reference like primitive coding earlier, that's exactly what I was talking about. Only in cases where you do like more procedural coding of if this, do that. That's the only way you're going to get the wokeism outcome. There isn't a way to have like an AI that is consuming a bunch of content and produce that same like social justice output. So yes, if you spend tons and tons of money on developers that embed woke options, yes, you can have that type of woke output. But there isn't a generic way to do that because there isn't a generic use case for it in our culture, right? There isn't anybody to feed
They
that.
I
train the
really like
AI
that.
on this channel,
I think that if
then
that were an
maybe
option, like a safe search,
Yeah, no, you could do that,
I
but then
like that
again,
a lot.
I
I
really
even want
hate
to ask
leftists. You
Tom.
guys are why we don't have nice things.
No,
It's
I want to
crazy
ask
as
Tom.
freak. We get all the technology that does the smart thing for us. It's actually
I'm
effective.
sorry,
It's
no,
effective as
like
freak. No, no, no. You
I'm
guys,
sorry if we got
They
if we
literally
got
want to
AI
lie to
if we
you.
got
wait,
a
come on, bro.
if
Can I
we
just
got
finish?
a hold on wait
Okay,
hold
I
on
just
hold
started
on
let
talking,
me
but that's
finish.
fine.
if we
Finish
got
your
Brutal
point.
like
fanatic.
Finish your point. Finish your point.
Thank you. Jesus, I just started talking. We work to get nice things. We work to make these things effective. I think it's incredibly effective and crazy to me that, like, yeah, when I look at like something like Google, it does its job. For example, when I used to play a lot of World of Warcraft, I know it's gross that I used to do that, but I did, and I was Googling things. Everything that I Googled, I remember I was impressed with the fact that, man, now that I'm like playing a bunch of World of Warcraft, I would search things that I know if my mother were to search, she would not get the same thing. Like I could type boat or flying mount, and it was like it would show me specifically World of Warcraft. But then that's because that's what I was playing. Whereas like other people would get different things. The thing was like working towards me in that way, and I thought that was like obviously impressive. But at the same time, I realized like how amazing our search options are. For example, you just Google, you tell it like, hey, what things are near this restaurant that I'm going to? What, or I'm going to this movie. What restaurants are near this movie theater? You can literally search that question and Google will give you the answer. It's effective as freak. Or if it's just like, hey, how do I change my car battery? Right? Something simple. It'll give you like, here's videos on how to do it. Our search engines are freaking amazing. It's crazy as freak the way we have access, the information that we have access to. But you guys want to ruin that because it's like, no. Make it less accurate so that it can reflect our retarded sensibilities of coddling people so that we can feel good about, like, what the frick are we talking about? Why not make these things as effective as they already are and give us accurate results that are reflective of reality so that people can use search engines for information and not your politics? You have to put politics in everything? Come
Yeah,
on,
really-
bro.
Hey, what
No,
I-
niggas are nuts. I hate leftists.
I want to hear from
Search
Water
options.
Kai. Water Kai, you want to say something to
Okay,
me?
what about me though?
Whoa, I'm just saying, it's not just about politics in this case. It's that it is generalizing people. It is doing its thing and doing what every human being does and creating biases on its own based on nothing
No,
whatsoever.
based off the inputs.
But
Yes,
based
exactly.
on
It's
the
the
data set.
aggregate of the data set. So what most people
Fanatic, I
think
don't know
and
if you know you're
feel-
muted.
No,
Go ahead,
it's based
Fanatic.
off of internet searches, which are reflective of reality. It's not based off of nothing. It's based off of reality.
Yeah.
It's based off the real
Yeah.
world.
Yeah,
What?
it's based off an
Exactly.
aggregate
You know,
of how people
yeah.
feel.
No,
Yeah,
not how people feel. It's an accurate aggregate of the results of the reality, as we pointed out. Yes, when it looks up flight attendants, yes, it's going to find out more women. Why? Because what percentage of 83.9% of flight attendants are women? 84%, bro.
What?
Yes, you should give me women. Give me women when I'm searching for this thing, or when I'm asking you to generate this thing. I don't want you generating an NBA player when I'm searching for freaking what? What are you talking about? Oh, why is it finding white men when we're talking about CEOs? 92.6% of CEOs in the Fortune 500 are white men. Why would I want it to be finding me Mexican ladies? What are we talking about? It should be accurate. What are you asking for?
Based on your democratic.
I think hold on.
based on your
I think I know how to
demographic-
hold on. I think I know how to reach. I think I know how to reach ultra leftists though. Like imagine you were looking up furry porn and it didn't show you furry porn, right? Like you'd be upset. And that's what we're telling y'all. You're literally asking your
Well,
search
Gambit, you
results
know-
of furry
Okay,
porn
it-
to not
the
show you
moment-
furry porn.
The moment
You
that
know
Alexa
what?
gets in the
Exact
way,
same
the
thing you're
moment that
saying?
Alexa
Furry
gets
porn
in the way of me
example.
busting a nut, then that's a problem. Okay, all
You-
right.
you know-
So let's go. So, hon, Waterkai, finish your point. Cause you have something to ask me, and then I want to actually answer this question.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to
Okay, then I'm
ask
just gonna
before.
go on then.
Right.
I blew his mind. He was like, "No, I want furry porn. No, no."
Okay, so I think I have a bit more of a nuanced take on this, closer to our friend GSU Gambit, because working technology and understand this a bit, right?
Oh, now I remember. It was what the definition of woke is, and is it not transitioning constantly?
I mean, I guess. I don't know.
If you're
No.
going to create a woke
Oh, I see
search
what you're
engine,
Okay.
would the term not continue to move left
Oh.
constantly? And if you're not in that level, would it not get removed, abolished, changed constantly?
If you
Well,
create
That's-
a woke
I mean-
search option, it should just generate
well,
blank
well, no, I
images
mean,
because
like-
everything is racist under the woke system.
Oh yeah, like it bakes into how like guys sensibilities keeps changing, right? And how difficult that would be for a computer to understand. So I wanted to bring something up. I was looking for the names of this. I was googling that with this incredible search engine technology that Fnatic was talking about. I was googling that. I couldn't find what I was looking for, but I believe it was in the 1980s. I'm gonna say, and maybe hopefully someone out there knows what I'm talking about. But I believe it was like in the 1980s. There was this professor at a college, right? Computer science professor, I guess. And he gave his students an assignment, right? He told his students to like connect like a camera to a computer and have it. This is like a summer assignment, right? And have it recognize birds, right? Like point it to a bird and just like recognize the species and all that for the birds. That was fucking impossible, right? This summer project in the 1980s, right? With like a fucking Apple II or some shit, right? Like that was impossible. And there was an interview with this guy later on, right? Because this is like a famous assignment, and it was just like never completed. There's a famous assignment, and they interviewed the guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I made a mistake here, right?" Which is a common mistake that most people make. And when it talks about AI learning, right, or computer learning, computer logic, right? Computer logic isn't the same as human logic. Humans can understand things at an intuitive level and make links, right? To like relate things to one another automatically, right? And like you can associate like animals with like furriness, right? Like dogs are gonna be furry, right? Like you can see a dog, be told that's a dog, okay, right? And then I'll recognize the dog has like 4 legs, is generally what they look like. But if a dog shows up with 3 legs, That's a little dog. I get that, right? Computers don't work like that. They got to be told these things, right? They're good at like abstract things like math and coming up with like numbers very quickly, so it seems smart to us, but it's not in that way, right? It's just really advanced calculus. That's all computers so far are all right. So programming this into a computer, right? So there's a long way to say that. Programming this into a computer is be extremely difficult. It like I want, right? What do I actually want here? I want an image generator, and this is not a search engine. Remember that. Well, with DALL-E, the thing we're talking about isn't a search engine. It's an image generator.
An image generator.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I want something that is a useful tool, something that's useful. But I think all of us want something that conforms somewhat to cultural standards, right? Like, if you, God, going back to that Tay example, right? The Tay AI that was on Twitter that have to be pulled down. That the things it was spitting out, right? Like had to do like Nazi shit at some point, right? Like people were like tossing it bad information or discussing information, excuse me, right? And then it incorporated that into itself. But like I don't think we want that, right? This is something that like computer ethicists have to come up understand. Like, do we want our AIs to if we're creating them to reflect human behavior, which is a big portion of AI research, right? Do we want that to reflect all human behavior? What if you have garbage individuals? Should it reflect racism? So for
Well,
this
no.
DALL-E image, I'm almost done. I promise, I'm almost done. I want to hear what you have to say.
Hmm.
For this DALL-E image generator, right? If you made a comment about like people in ovens, right? Rather than putting a person in an oven, right? Just like little guy in an oven, right? What if it was just like reflecting Jews, right? Dead body of Jews, right? Like, is that something we want? That's not necessarily like racism, right? But like, do we want something that's at the very least culturally sensitive? If Fanatic's kid in the future is using it, and just like having fun, do we want a penis to pop out when they put something innocuous in there, right? We would control for those things. So, is it so crazy to try to control for other things? So I'll leave it at that, and that's how.
Well, yeah.
I don't.
I just want to say really quickly. No, listen. First off, yeah, the problem with those AIs is that it was literally targeted and intentionally made to reflect some of the most worst aspects of society, which were the fringe groups, right? Because the vast majority of society isn't racist, or at least overtly racist. They're going to be covertly racist, like the leftists and the Democrats and all those people, where they pretend like, no, we're not actually racist.
Love
We
the
actually
jab.
care about black people, while literally doing absolutely nothing to actually give tangibles to black people that would actually benefit us. That's the kind of racism that this bot should have actually reflected, right? Once it starts going to the overt, nonsensical, alt-right, crazy, like then that's not reflective of society. It's reflective of the psychos, right? So that's why that became a problem. Secondly, we want our tools to be useful, and a tool is useful when it can do something that actually benefits society. So if the purpose of this thing generating things now, okay, if it's just a fun thing that we want to do, that we want to say, okay, look, here's what we're going to do. It's going to just be a fun toy for little children, in which we're intentionally trying to program some wokeness into them. Then sure, you can put a race randomizer on literally every single thing that it generates, and then at that point, it's like, so if you tell it flight attendant, it'll figure out a way of like, well, what's the flight attendant garb, and we'll generate random men or women, and it'll do those kinds of things. Now, of course, this no longer becomes an AI. It really just becomes like, I guess, a product of like, this is the things that like it becomes.
It's still an AI.
Propaganda.
No, it's not. It's not an AI at that point. Once you do that, it's no longer like resembling artificial.
How is it not an AI? Like,
because
it's
at this
not
point,
representing shit that we haven't decided.
I'll explain why. Because at this point now, it's no longer like randomly generating. I mean, it's no longer generating things that are useful, that are like, it's like like coming up with like that it's whatever. It's literally just going down a checklist of just doing all the things where you tell it to do. It would be like the equivalent of that thing where you tell it where you say, I'm going to think of an object and it's going to do 24 questions and then get towards you and then give you the answer. That thing is not intelligent. What it's doing is like, okay, well, if you answer the question, I have tables, and then those tables get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then eventually I can find, okay, this is the only thing that fits all of those characteristics, and it gets that data off of a whole bunch of people asking it questions, and it finally just getting acclimated to, well, like if 90% of people answer in this way, then it has to be this thing, right? So that's how those things work. So in the same sense, now what you guys are asking for is no longer a functioning tool that can generate things like from thin air, or I'm sorry, generate things that seem completely unique and whatever. It's just going to be looking and like going, okay, well, we're going to give it tables and it'll only be able to do things within those tables. That doesn't sound like a useful tool anymore.
So,
but if I wanted to generate images specifically for the purpose of like being able to do it on its own, then yeah, it's going to have to be able to do these things from some sort of pool. And the pool is going to be our search engines, and both DuckDuckGo and Google yield us the same pretty much results for all of the things that we're talking about here. Because if you're telling me that we have a search engine that doesn't reflect reality, it's no longer a useful tool. It's not a real search engine.
DuckDuckGo draws on Google, right? So like whatever. But anyway, but
name one that doesn't.
I need to. Al and Taj are gonna let them in, but like I gotta like yell at GSU for a second. GSU, you don't actually agree with Fanatic, right? And on the AI terms, right?
For sure, because material.
You know that, right? Like the AI that has nothing to do with its function, right? In terms of its output, right? Like it's an artificial intelligence, and there's a classification of programming that we're talking about. We're talking about artificial intelligence. So like what they did for this AI for DALL-E, right? Is that they did filter the results. The results that are getting, right? Like I made that comment about like a little girl getting a penis like in her face, right? Like when she's typing in there, right? Well, they massage the data, right? To specifically for that, right? That was their input data. They did that specifically to avoid explicit images coming out, right? Like that's already built into the system. That's an example of level of filtering. It doesn't mean it's not an AI, right? It has nothing to do with that, right? So that's like a non sequitur. Like,
can you break down to them what an AI is and what a script is so that they can understand that they're just wrong, please?
Yeah. So this is the part that I agree with Fanatic on the most. So I don't think filtering and ensuring certain results are on the same level. So what Fanatic was saying, and I think you agree with this, Prime, if me and you wrote a PowerShell script and we said somebody inputs a number, if it's even, do this, if it's odd, do that, we wouldn't call that AI when people use that program that we specifically targeted to give certain results based off of a certain input. The beauty of AI is this thing is aggregating and finding patterns itself in this data set. Now, some of it's guided in the lower levels, like when you get a computer to recognize the number 9, right? There's like positive association that a user does, and then it like grows from there. But like it's important to understand Fanatic's core point is the difference between building a script and the difference between building an AI. And when things are more procedural, we wouldn't call those things AI. So if you made a bot that said, if they input flight attendant, give me back wokeism, that's not that in a way that's no longer AI, because you're like corrupting the results that it's going to give. Filtering is different.
No, that's okay. So no. This is incorrect, right? And I don't know why you're fighting me on this, because this is pretty basic, right? Like this artificial intelligence that they're creating as it stands now, is a complex machine, right? That uses machine learning and like natural intelligence agents to come up with its results, right? And then from there, those results, and for all kinds of categories, right, have nothing to do with race, gender, or whatever the thing that you don't like, right? For those results get run through various scripts, right? Like the scripts are separate from that. Attaching a script to something, right, doesn't make it not an AI. It's simply a filter, right? Like, but that doesn't make it not artificial.
But you do understand a filter is different, right? If I'm saying like I want to filter out like curse words, right? Then I'm running some algorithm, and then post-processing, I'm filtering things out.
Exactly.
That's not the same as changing the algorithm itself to not generate curse words. Those are two fundamental, like, there's a gargantuan amount of difference.
When I talked about massaging the inputs, right? What they did was, at least from what I understand. If I'm incorrect, then I apologize because I'm not trying to lie. What they did was they look at the data set, meaning the images that are coming in, right, and they filtered out like before they created the AI, right? They filter out like those explicit images, so it doesn't even have that to draw on. That's my understanding.
Mhm.
If I'm wrong, then I apologize, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the mechanics of the AI, right? That in
So-
itself is the
Yes,
mechanics.
Yes, I agree with you completely on this.
Okay.
But I don't think this is where we're disagreeing. For sure, I agree that I said earlier, like, if you have a small scale thing and you control all of the inputs, it's possible that you could try to derive some output. But once you go more massive than that, it becomes impossible,
Okay,
right?
so we'll have to argue on this later because this is like a very, very specific point. And I want to get to the heart of matter. So before then, before I jump in, I want to get Isle and Taj, who've been waiting quite patiently.
Yes, like to what Prime's
Yeah.
broader point, I think it's very clear that we can all agree we don't want racist AI, we don't want sexist AI, we don't want homophobic AI, we don't want Islamophobic or transphobic AI, especially with how some people are trying to talk about. I think there was a panel talking about how maybe we should have AIs in charge of sentencing instead of judges, because judges can sometimes be racist. Why don't we just let an AI do it? Or why don't we let AI do redistricting maps for apportionment from the census data or whatever, instead of having it gerrymandered? If we're going to have all these AIs do things that leftist wants them to do, we can't have it be racist, we can't have it be sexist. And that's why I don't think we should let them do anything of like the governance at all, because I think that's just too much power for these AI, especially since we don't know who's making them, and and these unconscious biases that we're not going to understand until it's too late, and then they're like doing all sorts of racist crazy shit. So I think that we should just not do that. But like what Prime was saying is like, we can try and manipulate data sets all day in, in the operational phase to try and like get some wokeism out. But at the end of the day, when that goes public, people are going to be able to clearly see that, this was clearly done on purpose to be woke, and then people not going to care about it. People are not going to trust it because they're going to say, oh wow, it's just like woke propaganda that's being spewed at us, and they're going to try and some other AI program and that's going to try and compete with it. So I don't think that it's possible to like, actually soft code in or like try and like cheat the system by manipulating data sets to get out wokeism. I don't think it's possible to get wokeism if we're going to have open data sets, because the reality is the reality of whatever the data set happens to be.
We'll go to Taj, and I want to ask Taj, so you can answer this and then go into whatever you're going to go to. And I want to ask everyone else the same question. And I'm asking this. I'm not trying to like make a sort of positive like statement or anything, right? If a person typed in something like great leaders or leaders to admire, and an AI spit back out like Hitler or Stalin, right? Is that something we want? Is there a certain segment of the population that would consider that? So hold on, let's get Tosh, because Tosh has been waiting. Then I'm curious what you all have to say about that. Tosh, please.
Yeah, to answer that, like that kind of goes into my point. Like I understand like when people say, hey, if you type in CEO, it makes sense that a lot of these people are white males. If you type in basketball player, it makes sense that a lot of these people are black males. But by filtering out racism, that means like it's kind of like you want to take away pictures of Hitler, take away pictures of like Nazis, or make them less prioritized in that SEO algorithm. Same way if I typed in criminal, or if I typed in gang, or if I typed in crime, I don't want pictures of black men. I don't want pictures of stuff like that. If I typed in murder, I don't want O.J. Simpson to be the first one, or pedophile, I don't want Michael Jackson to be the first one. Like it's the same way where I feel like Google can actually do like stronger filtering, because if I type in the word desk ornament, it only takes me about 2 seconds of scrolling to get to a swastika desk ornament. Do that right now. It's a live experiment. Type in desk ornament, you'll get swastikas quickly. So I think that like there's an acceptable amount of filtering that we can implement to remove negative things like that. We don't have to do super positive, super woke things, but it doesn't harm anybody's like UX user experience, right? by like removing like things that are negative. If that makes any sense. Like the
Well, sure.
same, like, yeah.
I was just gonna say, well, the reason why you wouldn't want your search engine to yield yield O.J. Simpson when you do murderers, because O.J. Simpson never murdered anybody. The reason why you wouldn't want your search engine to say pedophilia when you're talking about Michael Jackson is because Michael Jackson never molested any children. So, like, yeah, you want your search engine to be more reflective of actual reality. Now, when you type in pedophile, you would want it to type, like, you wouldn't have a problem with it turning in Jared Fogle, right? Because Jared Fogle raped and molested God knows how many kids and was literally trying to buy them. So it makes all the sense. Or you'd want it to do someone like Kevin Spacey, because that would be accurate. And if you did molest her and it yielded R. Kelly, I don't think you would have a problem with that, right? Because we obviously know that R. Kelly did something that evil. So we want it to be freaking reflective. Or if you wanted to do rapists, like they did this in a book, and it seemed like all you leftists, and myself as well, we all agreed it was a great thing in that college textbook when they put Brock Turner's face next to rape. Right? They did rapist, and then for the definition of rape, it had a picture of Brock Turner. It's accurate. That nigga raped that woman and got 6 months for it.
But
right? So you want it to be reflective of reality.
Like a bunch of black men, right?
Huh?
Like prisoner, you don't want to be a bunch of black. If I put in criminal or prisoner or gang, you don't want to be a bunch of like black and brown men, right?
I think you're confusing two things: what we want and how things should work, and understanding if there's like integrity in what's happening are two different things. So of course, as black people, we don't want to be associated with some of the more like negative statistics, but that doesn't mean that the reality of it showing a black person when you type in prisoner isn't just, right? Those are two different conversations you're trying to like merge into one conversation.
That's
so how we internally feel is completely different from whether we think this thing is like consistent.
Absolutely. And I think the reason why we had all that complaint over the freaking stock images. Remember when people were typing in three black females, three white teenagers, it gave you all the stock images of 3 white teenagers, and it will all be beneficial. But when you said 3 black males, like the most common thing were mugshots. Right? Or three black teenagers, it was mugshots, right? Because more often than not, like media is going to be more reflective of society, and black people are still the minority of the society, right? Like we're still like we're actually not even the largest minority. We've actually been surpassed by Hispanics as they predicted. Thankfully, now that the Supreme Court has overturned this abortion bill, maybe we might actually see some like climbing back towards us actually not aborting over 50% of our babies or something like that. Right. So like maybe we can see some progress in that area. Like, and so I'm hoping for those things, but like those are problems that we've actually faced. So I would say that I don't have a problem. Like if the thing did yield right now a result and you did prisoner and it like reflected more black people than anyone else, I wouldn't have a problem with that, because that seems like that would be reflective of reality.
Wow.
What I want is for the conditions, for the unjust policing of black neighborhoods, for the disproportionate sentencing of black people, for the weaponizing of the criminal justice system specifically to target black men. I would want that to disappear such that we wouldn't get these ridiculous outcomes, and for them to give us the tangibles that are necessary so that we can economically lift ourselves out of deprivation, because white people didn't lift themselves out of deprivation. They got those handouts from the government. The government handed them those jobs, handed them those loans, handed them those homes, handed them the education. So if we could get those things, then maybe we would actually not see these outcomes that are so detrimental, and then we wouldn't have the search results that would actually be reflecting reality. We want the reality to change. We don't want the search engine to stop changing. Have the search engine be accurate. That's a good thing. But if it's showing something, then it's showing the reality that systemic oppression is still ongoing and it's not being offset despite the Democrats being in power, and in fact, it's being perpetuated harder when Bill Clinton gets into office, and we're seeing these crime bills happen, and we're seeing them get rid of the recidivism rates increase because he's getting rid of the Pell Grants and so on and so forth.
Way out there, okay.
Yeah,
but
you can have both things, man. You can have it where they're. Yeah, you can have both things. You can have it where the term prisoner is a little bit more diverse versus like a bunch of black people, or where criminal or gang is like a little bit more diverse versus a bunch of black people.
You can, if you want it as a representative sample of what the word represents in society, right? Like if I Google bricklayer, I'm gonna find men, right? I don't want to find Asian women because there's some woke filter, right?
Yeah, I'm saying like, all right, for the positive things, I'm cool if they're not being some sort of crazy.
But those positive and negative patterns,
things, I prefer those bumpers are there.
Those positive and negative patterns are built the same way, and you're asking for some structural like difference in how you're asking. First, you'd have to be able to solve a problem of detecting morality, and whose morality would you use for that? And then you're asking for that morality to then be embedded. Like those things are not possible.
Yeah, and the problem that you have is that you're ignoring the statistical data behind how these systems pull from these searches. They were talking a lot about the scripts and how these things you can conduct this research on your own by opening up an Excel spreadsheet and typing in an if function, and you put in certain variables, and it will always yield you a certain answer based off of whether it checks off the boxes as it goes down that list. You can't do that if you're trying to make an accurate representation of what's going on in reality. The search results will change as the statistical data that machine is pulling from changes. So when we start to see the statistical data change from what people are searching for, the images will change. You have to understand that a lot of times when you search for something and it's your first time searching for it, Google doesn't have your history to pull from. This AI doesn't have your history to pull from. Like my first introduction into pornography was by complete accident. I was in I think high school in a STEM class doing a PowerPoint on my life, and I was looking for an image of a black Bible to represent my black Bible, and I typed that
Uh-oh.
in
Oh
on I
no!
typed that in on
Bible
Google.
Black. Oh
I typed it in
no.
on
Let's
Google.
go.
Bible Black.
I type
Yes,
in black.
classic.
God,
I
Bible
type in
Black,
black
and we're
Bible.
good.
I type
Yeah,
in black
Bible
Bible
Black.
on Google, and I get
Yeah,
images that I'm like. But now, if I type that in
It's
on Google right
hentai.
now, if I type in that right now that Google knows my search history, I don't get those same images anymore. I have to scroll down very far to find those images. Same thing with YouTube. It's owned by Google, where
I'm sorry
now
you don't get those images
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
I'm
Bible
glad I
Black
don't
is
So
get those
pretty
Prime
images
awesome.
Kai,
anymore.
Did you discover docking that way, or did you feel like were you intentionally looking for docking? Like, how did you first discover that, or you other leftists?
Okay. All right. Look. Okay. Look, I think
I don't
this
know what that
is.
is. What
I
is
think it's a
that?
really interesting conversation on like tech ethics, ethicists, ethics,
Ethics.
tech ethics. Yes. I think this is super interesting because like
That's
my
smug.
like I know like my fuck you fanatic. I know
Smug as fuck.
I know.
Listen, we're the
Wait,
we're
I
the
gotta look
greatest
this up now.
minds. They're the best
Oh.
counsels for tech ethics, really.
I
Luckily, I didn't look on an
I
image generator for docking, so I'm good.
Wait,
I know
what?
you fanatic. I know. Oh my god.
Jesus
Okay.
Christ!
I know you guys. I know you think
That's what
that.
conservatism will get you. You will now understand what docking means.
Oh
If you
boy.
follow the right, you will
I
understand
mean,
docking.
what is the purpose of trying to bring ethics to a computer
So
generated system?
hold on. No, absolutely, it matters. Hold on. No,
People
no, no.
want
Hold on.
computers
It
to be
matters. Hold on.
evil, I think.
So hold on. You guys. So to fanatic, and to maybe Chishu, right? I know you guys think that I have a straight up leftist brain and I can't see past my own perspective on this one. But like, I'm really my thoughts are not settled on this at all, right? And like how this should be done.
Well,
Yeah.
But like,
that's
so I wanted to like pull back because like AI like is something difficult for people to understand here. I think that's been on display a lot,
Dog is
right?
dying.
Very.
But like, so I want to pull back, right? When we're talking about uh bias built into technology, right? We don't need like computer system to look at that, right? That's been there for a long time. Look at Kodak, right? Kodak, for the longest time, right, way back when, right,
Didn't
when
recognize black faces.
it's not that it didn't recognize them, it's that like it when
Xbox
they were
Connect?
calibrating, when they were doing their calibrations for like what a
And never used
proper
black
base
people.
should look like, they used white women, right? In fact, they had these things called Sharon cards because the first woman a Kodak employee that they used, right, was named Sharon, right, pretty white woman, and like they color balanced on her, right? And then other white women from after that, right? And they would hand out these Sharon cards, and they said like to photographers, right? And saying like this is what a proper color balance should look like. In any case, this was built into the very technology itself, and it wouldn't. And if you've seen black photos from like the 80s and the 70s, right? Like black people were washed out, just like eyes and and teeth, right? That's all we were. But it wasn't because there was a limit in terms of what technology could do. It's just that Kodak didn't give a shit. Like at that point, like it didn't care.
Yeah.
And the only reason it started to care was because of corporations, right? Because like
Yeah, money.
Nestle for their like photographing their chocolate, right? And like furniture companies, like they wanted to like look at like wood grain, right? Different types of brown wood grain. They complained about it, and then that's when they finally like expanded themselves.
So
Right? But the point is
so
right. So the it persisted. What I'm talking about, this persisted afterwards because people kept using those Sharon cards to calibrate. Like this is what things should look like, right? What colors should look like. So like they gave those to photographers, and photographers were calibrating for white skin again and again, even if they weren't like racist or anything, right? So this kind of gets built into our culture and built in and all that. Is that something we want? Shouldn't we like
so
take these things?
yeah, I can answer this, Prime.
Fine.
I can answer this. So if we're talking about like we obviously recognize diversity is a good thing. So right, if you're saying that I want more diverse inputs into this system, I don't think anybody is going to be against that, right? So obviously we're going to say, hey, if you are back in whatever when Kodak was doing that, hey, use a more diverse set of inputs so that you can test to make sure it works for everybody. Of course, nobody's going to be against that.
Well,
The problem now is we're crawling a large data set, and we don't have the Kodak problem where it's like only certain inputs are being fed. The problem is all of these inputs are being fed that we can't control anymore. So it's a problem that the data set is so large now.
Yeah, I think the problem again, when GSC was saying here, is with Kodak, it was again came down to the control group where you were able to control the variables about who you were testing upon, and as GSU said, they needed to test upon other people of different skin tones in order to see if it was working for everybody. With this, what you would have to do in order to make this the case is you would have to eliminate the majority of the searches from the majority of the world in order to generate your idea of diversity when it comes to that. And you don't have the ability to control for that in a sample size that's this large.
So, first of all, I made a mistake. It's not Sharon cards, Shirley cards. Excuse me. Right, that's what they were called, Shirley cards. So if you're looking that up, that's what you want to look for.
Was Microsoft using those Shirley cards
I don't know.
when they made Xbox Connect and it didn't like black people?
So you got to exactly where I was going to take it, right? Like, that's the thing that happened as well, right? Like from different manufacturers, they're creating web cameras that like try to recognize a human face, right? And they don't recognize black faces because they didn't bother. But
It's
so,
not.
but
No,
I know you're saying this is different, right? I know you're trying to draw a
no. I'm gonna say
so
it's not
okay.
because they didn't care. That's not it. Can we not like assign intent towards these things and like
No,
more
it's
look
not
at like
intent. It's
reality and
not
what's
intent.
happening?
It's not intent. It's
What
just
is
they
it?
didn't. We're
There
such a small
there
minority. They didn't care.
absolutely was intent
It, no,
in terms
no.
of
That
Kodak.
again, saying that they didn't care, saying they didn't care again. That's intent. What it
There was
really
intent
is.
in terms of Kodak, right? We
Well,
recognize that.
no, I don't think it was. I don't
Yeah,
think
because Kodak knew about the problem. Black people wrote into them. They told them, "Hey, this is a fucking
That might
problem."
have been
They didn't
post
give a
hoc, and now
shit.
you're asking them to
That's
fix it. And you're
that's what I'm
saying originally
saying.
They
the
only
fanatic
fixed
is
it when money was
Come on,
involved.
bro.
Okay, whatever.
No, no, no.
but
Okay, I got you.
hold on,
No,
hold
no,
on.
that's a different
Yeah,
statement than what I'm saying. I'm
yeah.
not saying that they can't. I'm saying that we don't know their intent when the problem was created, and we've seen this problem recreated in new things where they didn't have an intent. What it seems like and what it sounds like is when you look at these jobs and these employment opportunities, and the people in the research and development team are all white people, and they're testing it on all of the people as well as working on all of us. Let's go ahead and extend it out to the rest of the corporate office. And if the rest of your corporate office is white people, then it seems like the results are going to be after testing it extensively on all of the people inside of your office, and it seems like, yo, this thing is really effective, it's working great. So it's like, good, now let's go ahead and now this thing is effective, it's working, and now we'll do that. But it wasn't a matter of them like, oh, intentionally leaving out black people. It's more of, again, this it seems like a great parallel. I'm glad that you brought this up, Prime. It sounds like this is a great parallel where it's more reflective of the reality in the times in which, of course, black people were being discriminated against, and so they weren't represented within the research and development team, right? Because they didn't have the degrees in the fields where they would be hired by the research and development team, and so then as a result of that, then they're not being reflected, right? So then that's why they don't have any input. Makes sense to me. Does it not make sense to any of you guys?
So they didn't care to because they didn't think about it.
It's not that they didn't care to. It just wasn't a
there.
yes. Okay, if y'all niggas are going to insist on doing that, you can beleaguer the conversation all you want to. I'm not taking part in that. That's
Fanatic,
just
Fanatic,
stupid.
don't
It's
bullshit
really
me.
simple.
Fanatic, they had a customer base. It wasn't like black people were a foreign concept, right? They
Yes,
had
and the
a
majority of their customer base, the base was white, like the
Yeah.
vast majority.
Exactly true, but they marketed to black people. They said like, oh, you should capture a Kodak moment.
But that doesn't.
With like, but
But-
they
but
were
didn't they
using
correct
black.
the
So that's
issue?
what I'm talking about
Wait.
intent. I
Oh,
get it.
Prime-
I get it. You can
Prime.
say
Not intent.
Prime, do you remember when Io talked about implicit biases and understanding that we don't have them? That exists even in people developing things. So if
I
a
agree.
input
Yes.
group, but that doesn't mean that they don't care or it's some way malicious. Like that's the whole concept of unconscious bias is that it's not malicious, right?
literally
It's
have
not
to-
intellectualized, right?
I literally have to
I
like
mean,
dig
we need
up
to
the interview.
diversify the
I gotta
data
dig up
sets.
the-
Yeah.
But
So
in the
it's-
real
what's
world,
Prime
you
it's
saying?
not
data
malicious.
sets are just as they are. We can't you can't artificially inflate a data set to put like random stock images of like male
Stewardess.
flight stewardesses because that's just not true. Now, if there happen to be some male flight attendants that are black, definitely we should make sure that they don't get excluded from the data sets, but we can't just inflate artificially the data set to make sure that they come up 50% of the time when they're only like, let's say like 5% of the actual data set,
So
can't
so
be-
Prime, if I'm looking up cuckolds, you want like the men to show up as black people? That's what you would want? You'd rather it be like just injecting black people into this, even though that's not something that black people do?
No,
That's a white thing?
That's okay, buddy. Fanatic,
Okay.
fantastic.
That
No,
wouldn't be the
No, but
aggregate.
I've said okay. I said
It's
previously.
funny how y'all
in
agree
terms
with the
of-
porn though. Y'all,
No,
like
no.
the porn, y'all. You know
No,
what? I can't argue that.
No,
That was a three-tiered
no, guys,
jab. That
hold
was
on.
high level.
Guys, so I'm talking about to be very clear, right? When it came up to that image generator, right, or I guess from the search filter and what you're talking about now, I haven't made up my mind on how that should be, right? Like I haven't figured that out. I'm like trying to figure out like the ethics of this all, right, and what it should look like. Let's. I'm literally looking because I looked into the Shirley cards like 2 weeks ago. So I'm looking for an interview like that includes discussions like from a Kodak employee to prove my point. But like while we're doing that, while I'm looking for that, like there is because there's a person who did a book on this thing. When we're talking about AI, right? If we want like you can imagine, right? Like my best buddy AI, right? Like we could give like an android, right, to a person, and that android become their best friend, right? And there's all kinds of uses you could have for this, right? This could be like a therapy thing, right? Like so, my best buddy, and you could do it for kids.
There's a Black Mirror episode for this.
Probably. I'm sure. I'm sure there is, right? But if this individual, right, and this AI robot doesn't just interact with its owner, but the outside world, right? If the individual that it's becoming best friends with is like has a lot of racist beliefs, right? And says all kinds of racist things to this AI, do we want it to repeat it, right? Like its best friend would repeat these things, right? So if it says things about the Jews, right, then you would want it to repeat that to Jewish people, like, oh, like you don't belong here.
No,
right?
wait,
Like, get back
repeat
in
it to
the
Jewish
synagogue.
people is different. Thought you were
That's why I said like
personalizing.
if it interacts with the rest of society, right? Now, if it's just
Oh, I
interacting
see
with
what you're saying.
itself, yeah,
Yeah,
It's
for sure. I
interacting
think it
with
would. If you went to a person's house that was racist and they had told it, "I hate black people,"
but should it?
I don't. Yeah, I would
designed to
say
learn
yeah.
who
That's
they
just
are
the
as a
way
person.
that's and should it isn't okay. Again, I think we're moving a step past, right? Because again, it should. The question is supposed to be, should that input be there? And no, that input shouldn't be there. But if that's the input that a machine learning, like an AI, like something that's supposed to be like learning, if should it be able to reflect the information that is coming to so that it's gleaning information? Yes, that's the whole purpose of it. So the input is bad. It's the same thing with children. Hold on. It's the same thing with children. You want your children to be learning. You don't want them to like constantly just be like replicating the same dumb ideas or the same stupidity like a leftist or something. You want them to actually learn and like engage with other people and stuff, right? So if you're having them engage with like really terrible people, you know you're going to get bad outcomes. So you try to keep bad influences away from them. It's like, okay, no, we're not going to be having you listen to Nancy Pelosi or other idiots or AOC or stuff like that. No, I'm going to put like sensible, reasonable ideas and concepts in front of you to help you keep growing. You're like getting mad at the thing that like, yo, this thing is learning. Like we program something that can learn and it's starting to reflect the input that it's getting. That's crazy.
Fanatic. What I'm saying is like in this AI, right, future that we haven't achieved, right? So we got like an android, it's walking around.
It's hard to say we haven't achieved this.
No, we're getting there. We're getting close, right? Like it's amazing what AI can do now, right? But Waterkai, I see your hand up. So in this future, right, we can have a choice, right? We have the choice to say that we can lock these things out, right? When talking about maybe at the most in private, like okay, yeah, you can say like the N-word or whatever, right? But like in public, no, you don't get this to do that. Even though like that would be adulterating, right? Like the results, right? Like the behavior of the AI, right? So if we have the choice in that, right? So I'm talking about the ethics of this, right? Not the mechanics of it, right? But we have the choice to filter these things out. That like you can't go around saying that like put Jews in ovens or whatever the fuck, right? Why wouldn't we want that as a society? Like, do we want racist AI? Or what if like the person was saying that the AI should get violent, right? Like I'm
You
a
switched to
violent
the word
person.
want.
I see my master, my owner, like they get violent with individuals, right? They go beat people up. And that's what they like to do. They want me to join into that, so I join into that, right? Like we will put limits on something like that, right? So physical violence, why not other sorts of violence?
Yeah.
Because one, we have free speech. So it's gonna be hard to like say what types of speech you can't have because there are different ways that you can
But
get
the robot has free speech now.
No, the people that are going to be teaching it
Yeah,
have free
but we're not
speech.
talking about that. We're talking about the robot.
They're going to be dog whistling, and it's going to be the same thing. This is going to be like dog whistles
Why
upon
is
dog
this so
whistles in
hard?
the AI.
I mean,
And
the,
then
the hard part is that you
I'm saying, look, you have
your
a choice.
solution to
Hold on,
everything
hold
is
on.
to ban
I'm
something.
saying, hold on. I'm saying you have a choice in terms of the output, right? Not in terms of the input. Yes, the human owner can say whatever the fuck they want, right? But if I'm in this imagined future, right? So go along with me. This hypothetical, you have a choice about what the output can be, right? You can decide what is the most therapeutic actions of something like this. Let's say it was specifically made for therapy, right? Like even though like the AI was supposed to be the best friend of this individual, you can decide that hey, maybe some the behaviors, right, that this person, the schizophrenic person, is behaving or is exhibiting, right? We don't want the AI to reflect that, but we still want it to be his best friend, right? That
Well,
would
then
be
it
our
stops
answer. We're
being
saying
AI.
don't. It's not. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't know what AI is. You don't know
No,
what
no, no.
AI is. If
No,
you
no,
say
no.
that,
Let me
that's not
explain.
what
Let me
AI
explain.
is.
Let me explain. Let me explain. Like I promise you, I'm going somewhere with it. Right.
Okay.
So like the reason why I'm saying it stops being AI is because at this point, like it becomes like like it becomes really robotic and it stops really exhibiting intelligence. And here's the reason why. Here's the reason why. Like the same way where we say yes it is Astro. Not that game, but you have to see it. That was a comeback. That was crazy. I got fourth. Like the thing is, if once things stop being like once they become incredibly robotic and we're like hyper controlling what's happening with it, it stops really being this intelligence that we're talking about. For example, like you can say, well, what if I have this person that I make that loves me, a Stepford Wife? Did you ever see that movie or the old movie or even the current one?
The
Perfect.
one,
Yeah. Okay. Perfect example. So if I make my Stepford wife, it stops really being human. If it can never fight with me, if I'm a Caucasian and it's
That's
telling
not
me how
what
great
AI
my
means.
sex
It's a
game is,
hive mind.
like at this point, hold on. If once I start running into all of those kinds of issues, and it's like stops being reflecting reality, telling me like, oh, you.
That's not what AI means.
That's a hive mind.
It's not what
That's
AI
the
means,
definition
though.
of
What do you
hive
mean?
mind.
What do you mean? It's a hive mind? What are you saying?
It has
step
nothing,
with
it has nothing to do with
Cuckoo,
anything.
then
Sorry,
it made
sorry. Look, no, that's not what AI
hypervised
means.
Cuckoo,
That's not what
then
AI
hive
means.
mind.
AI doesn't have to do with something being intelligent, right? Or human, excuse me, right? That's not what AI means, right? You're
No, it's
talking
supposed to
about
be
specifically.
artificially intelligent. That's what AI
Yes,
is.
yes,
And
but I'm
we're
sorry.
representing human intelligence.
Oh, yes, you. Oh my God. Yeah. The purpose of this Android that I set up, right? That's displaying artificial intelligence, which is a wide field of programming, right? Of outcomes, right? Like AI is not simply like reflecting human behavior, right? Like your car can have AI, right? Like, have artificial intelligence in it, but we don't necessarily think it will have to reflect what a human being would do,
No,
right? That's
you
not
wouldn't
what
say the car
I
has AI.
I know.
The car does not have AI. It has.
I know
It
you
has.
wouldn't say that because you're wrong. Because you don't
Oh,
understand
I'm
AI.
wrong.
I get
Oh, let me
that.
Google.
Yes,
Let me Google. Let me
you.
Google which cars
That's
have
not
AI
what
in it.
AI in
AI
cars.
is,
Look,
right?
you
Like
know, I
that's
Like
like
so,
I
smart
think
driving.
you're
Smart
looking.
driving is
You're
AI.
talking
You're
about
saying?
like the
Yeah, you can
uncanny
put AI in
valley.
cars and they can
Oh my
make
God!
No,
You're
I'm
talking
saying we
about
don't
like
have
the
it now. We
uncanny.
don't have it now. So smart driving is AI. Is that what you're saying?
Oh my God!
it
You're not
can become
listening.
that
You're not
with
listening.
more
Oh my
You're
God.
not listening.
Okay,
to
no,
me.
but it's not that now. That's what I keep saying. So you're saying more cars now have AI? Don't respond. It can become that
I'm saying you don't
now.
fucking know what AI is. I'm saying
Oh, I'm
you don't
asking you.
know what AI
Okay, I got
is. So
you.
I'm trying to
Okay, good.
explain that to
I'm
you.
just trying to make sure we're limit testing. Do any cars nowadays have AI? Prime? Do any cars now have AI? Prime?
They can display a version of artificial intelligence. Yes, actually, yeah.
So you would say the answer to the question is yes, cars now have AI?
Yeah, sure. Let's say that. They have a
Okay.
version of
All right.
artificial
You're right.
intelligence.
I don't know what AI is. Thank you. Go ahead and continue with your point, please.
Do you think, once again, that AI means being human? That like is reflective of human beings. That's not what that is. That's not the same thing. God, holy shit. Holy shit.
you
Like
know,
it's
I
not the
think
same thing, right? You're thinking that like I'm talking about like okay. All right, I don't know. All right. So
uh,
when we
I
call the doll E AI, right? When it's been referred to as artificial intelligence, doll E, the thing they have today, doll E, right? Is that reflective of a human being? Is that what it's doing? Trying to reflect human beings?
No,
Fanatic?
it's no. I'm sorry. Yes, the answer to your question is no. It's not reflecting human
Okay.
beings. It's supposed to be reflecting human intelligence. And of course, there's more to be human beings than just their intelligence. But it's supposed to be, if it's an artificial intelligence, it's supposed to be replicating human intelligence.
It can replicate human intelligence, but not human behavior. Those are two different things. Okay, so
Sure.
hold on.
I think
Okay, so we got
Sure.
hold on, we got something. Hold on, guys. Sorry, I gotta like work this out with Fanatic because it's driving me fucking crazy, right? So I get you. Maybe that's where we're making the mistake. Okay, right? So it can human intelligence in the terms of the learning process, right? But the behavioral process is different, right? The way you learn, right, doesn't necessarily mean indicative of exactly how you behave, right? They have different humans, right, that learn in different ways, in vastly different ways, right? There are people who are right? Autistic, excuse me.
Well, yeah,
And
you learn what
they
docking is, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna be doing it. It's just something that you learn and
exactly right.
research and watch,
Yeah,
right? So that's the thing of learning. So if so, when you teach your other leftists what docking is, like you're telling them about it, but not displaying it. So yes, in the same sense, like the AI, it should be able to learn, but it doesn't have to actually do the behavior, right?
yeah,
So it's the
yeah.
same thing. I get that. So you're
Okay.
saying that it should be able to learn what the racism is, but it's not going to do the racism, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and so yes, you can control its behavior, but it's
Mhm.
still going to be learning,
Yeah,
like
but
how you did.
my point my point is that like it's still artificial intelligence even if we control its behavior, right? Even if we lock down its output, that doesn't change like how it's learning and growing, right? So
Sure,
can we agree on that?
sure,
Okay, good. All right.
yes.
I'll just leave it there. All right. So someone else will
I
jump in.
completely disagree.
Oof.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
you know,
Let
Look,
me hear that.
we have
so do
we
Let me
have
I.
hear that, Gambit.
individuals. Hold on, just your Gambit. We have individuals who literally work with machine learning and AI in chat, right? I'm talking about you, Sam the Human. I see you out there, right? Like, come into the open panel afterwards, right? It's not gonna be too long from now. Come to the open panel afterwards. help us. Kamikaze, you're out there. You're another technologist, right? Like, well, you work in databases, but like, come in. Let's have a discussion about this, about what this is. Maybe I'm talking about out my ass, right? It's happened before. It's not happening now, but let's pretend that it is, right? So come in,
Yep.
Fanatic, a GSU.
Pretend it's a
You guys
regular
can come in.
day.
We can have that argument. But like,
I'll do
I
it.
want
Yeah,
to
you're right.
these other people in.
I'll stick around for the open.
Sure.
I'm gonna have to take a small break, and then I'll be able to come back. And then,
Sure.
before I get back, you guys can just like save this conversation for a little bit, continue talking about your docking or whatever the freak else, and then I'll be there. Give me a
This
minute.
man, I had a question for Fanatic a while
Mhm.
back. It was in regards to the input that the AI gets. So the AI gets an aggregate of information and correlates it. So if you have people that would vote conservatively but have different views, like say they voted, anti-abortion, but in the end they got abortions. Their search engine searches will be an aggregate of what this is, and that's what the AI will ultimately put out. Wouldn't that skew what you would believe you would be getting from
Wait.
the AI in itself?
Wait, the AI would get the. So you're talking about like the fact that like people are like liars or people can
Yes.
misrepresent what their actual things are. And so
Yes.
then because of that, then the AI is going to be a skewed representation of only learning the demonstration of what's online, but not a real reflection of reality, right?
No, our perspective on reality would be skewed. The AI is getting the reality.
Wait, so what is the AI getting that we're not? Like what input is the AI getting that we're not?
What these people are searching for. If they're
Oh,
if
so
a
like
woman
so
says she's anti-abortion, she's searching abortions,
Mhm.
the AI will know what you don't.
Oh,
So you would
sure.
think
So
the demographic is what it is. So in red states, you would think they're anti-abortion, so on and so
sure.
forth. But in
Yeah.
reality, they're getting abortions and searching for
Mhm.
them. The
Yeah,
AI
so
would reflect that.
as long as the AI has access to the information. So it seems like what you're just basically saying is that an AI will if an AI has access to extra information, it will reflect. Thank you, Kimberly, for the raid. If an AI has access to information, it will reflect its extra information in ways that we don't because we don't have access to that information. Of course,
Right.
right?
And that's
Like
the bias we're speaking on because we don't believe we have that bias, but that's the bias that actually exists in the mirror of humanity.
no. But that okay, sure, I guess I wouldn't call that a bias per se. I would say that that's
It's
probably
it's an implicit bias. It's a bias we don't even know we have.
I
We just
I
are
don't
there.
Well, I don't
I don't
believe
think
so.
I don't think that's a bias. I think that's just that's a missed input of
Yeah,
information,
that's
right? That's
preference
I'm sorry.
falsification.
That's a right. Yes, that's a misinformation. So that's there you go. Reference falsification. So the perfect way of saying that. Thank you, Io. So that's not a matter of our bias. That's what that is. And so then the AI, obviously, but now if the AI has access to the exact same things that we have access to, then it's going to reflect human learning, hopefully, and gain this perspective. Like I would have had the idea, as I'm pretty sure most Black people in this panel would have the idea, like, hey, the Democrat Party cares about Black people because we see all the performative stuff, we see them like changing like street names, we see them like claiming that they want certain bills and all these things, we see them do all this performative nonsense. But then we should, if we actually look at the input, find out what benign neglect is, see what the Democrat Party is actually doing, study the actual harm from legislation that has come from the Democratic Party. If we start studying all those things and see their complete opposition to reparations while claiming to want to support Black people, if we start saying all of those things and we're recognizing those things, then we should be able to say, hey, no, the Democrats don't care about Black people. And if an AI was able to study history effectively, then an AI should be able to say the exact same thing and come to the accurate conclusion that the Democrats don't care about Black people. But if the AI is only going off of the things that people say on social media, then yeah, maybe it might have like an idea like, hey, the Democrats care about Black people because we've all like fallen to their same like propaganda the same way. Like the AI should be reflective of whatever its input is. And if its input is Democrat propaganda, like false stuff that's like saying like that they care about Black people, then that's what it should reflect.
But if we get an aggregate of all people involved. So whatever
It's going to have to go through online. How is it going to get how does it get the aggregate of all the people who aren't even online? How does it get that? Or the people who are like intentionally putting Facebook, like for example, on that Black Mirror episode
online.
Sure. So yes, but it's going to reflect the majority. It's not going to just sit there and automatically be saying stupid stuff like, "Oh, Jewish space lasers," just because of Marjorie Taylor Greene and her alt-right rereads. So like, it's going to have to it's going to go off of
that becomes
like, yes,
a parameter.
Yes, but it's going to be the hyper minority.
Of course. And that's
So
the
then, it's gonna probably disregard that, because in the same sense, it's gonna look at that as misinformation. No matter any piece of information that you want to find online, you can find something online that reflects your ideas. No matter what it is, there is a community for it. There is a flat Earth society. The flat Earth society, from the time I was like, I've lived here until probably around 2000. I'm gonna say maybe 2014. The flat Earth society was literally in my city and on our main boulevard. That's where the Flat Earth Society was. So you can find people to support that. You know that like docking isn't like going to be found in the majority of people, but there's going to be a few leftists that are going to be into that. So then you don't want like when you start talking about sexual experiences, you don't want the AI bot to sit there and start talking about docking and all this other nonsense. And you want it to do whatever the majority is. You can find like small offshoots for anything that you want to do. But you want it to be, if it's an aggregate, you want it to reflect whatever the general thing is. That's why it's doing the thing with it. It's doing with the CEOs. That's why it's doing the thing with it. It's doing with the stewardess. Like it just makes sense.
So here's the problem. So you bottom line, you end up with a good 42% of people that don't believe Joe Biden won the election under legitimate circumstances. The AI is going to believe that and project.
No, it won't. The AI wouldn't believe that because you just said it, 42%. So that means 58%. That means the majority of people actually do believe that the election was valid. And hopefully, if it's an AI, then you can actually expose it to information, not like a leftist. You can expose it to information and show it like, hey, look, here's the facts. Here are the judges that were literally appointed by Donald Trump that are literally saying, no, that you don't have any information to actually support this. Here are the actual studies, the actual investigations, none of which turned over results. And then that should make you update your brain. That's the whole point.
That's the hope, but this AI doesn't understand context, and that's what I said to Prime earlier.
I mean,
AIs don't get
you're going
context.
around in
Individual
you're going around in
article will be
circles.
used as a data point in the data set. So as long as there's enough pro big lie narrative,
I don't
It'll be
understand what the
represented.
issue.
So it'll
is.
make a painting showing that.
targeted. But hopefully you can have anti-big lie data points in the data set that will overwhelm the big lie to the point where the AI will gradually come to more and more firmly believe that the election was not stolen.
Yeah, you get fact checkers. That's why you have fact checkers to dismantle the majority of misinformation. So that when people say stupid stuff like Democrats care about black people, it's like, nope, fact check. They've been like the greatest harm, the greatest detriment, so on and so. So then you're not just like perpetuating this nonsense. People can actually learn and update and come to the reality of the truth.
No, but the problem is you keep going around in circles with this. What's so hard to understand about the data sets they're pulling information from and how they're using it? And why is it so difficult for you guys who want to have this woke database to just input a line or two extra or a word or two extra of descriptive information about what you're searching for? And you want
I said the word context earlier.
If you want context, you put context in the search bar. You want specifically people who don't believe in election results, and then you say to the AI, how many people don't believe in election results? It'll tell you 42%. But if you talk about the election, and as Fanatic was saying, it's gonna look in its system and say 58% say it's legitimate. So that's the bottom line, legitimate. If you want to look for black female airline attendants, just type that in. Get the image that you want to by adding one or two words extra. Why do you have to try to force the entire world to bend to your reality because you don't like the facts of the statistics that exist in the realm that we all exist in?
So I think everything DeAndre, hold on. I think everything DeAndre is saying is the problem that me or Fanatic would find with the Democratic Party. Instead of trying to cheat the results, do the actual work to make it where the data that what the AI reads is the data set that you would like. So actually materially impact people versus socially virtue signal to them. And then that data set will change. And when that data set changes, you will then see propagation of the ideas that you would like. My problem is everybody wants to short circuit actual progress with this fandom shit online. And like, that's not real progress.
Can we
Yeah.
Wait, don't respond. Can we just sit with that? Can we just sit with that for 5 seconds? Do we understand? Like, I think I can't say it any more succinctly.
It's huge.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what
I'm
you
really
guys are
directing it at the
saying.
leftists in the room.
I see what
Leftists, does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I did miss it. I apologize. Could you
Please say it again. Please say it again, please.
Yes, Steve. Say it again.
So basically, what I'm saying, problem is the problem that some of us have with the Democratic Party is you want to cheat the results, right? When I look up CEO, you want to see like a very diverse set of people. The problem to me is what we should do is we should try to change the data that the AI is reading. So we should change the material conditions of people so that there are more diverse set of CEOs. And then the robot, the AI, will output exactly what is actually happening in reality versus let's actually just change the results, even though that's not the material reality. So I've always been a big fan of material reality being equivalent to the things that we want expressed. My problem with like ultra leftists is they're like, hey, I don't really care what the material reality is. Just express this fandom to make people feel good.
Okay. So
Yeah, he said you guys are trying to shortcut.
So
You guys are trying to what he said, like more succinct, because he said it better the first time. But it's fine. It's still great. He still explained it. It's just that you guys want to shortcut. You guys want to shortcut the actual tangible changes that would actually yield the results that you guys actually want. And you want to shortcut it with performative nonsense and wokeness and algorithms and results as opposed to changing the actual like
Only
material
Taj
conditions.
proposed that.
So
Yeah, well,
okay,
you see, the problem is that they
hold
they
on, hold
want.
on. I gotta respond to this, right? It's called out
Please.
leftist, right? So like so,
Yes, the chief leftist should speak.
well, thank you for giving me the deference I fucking deserve. So you're confusing wokeism and leftism, right? Like,
There's no
I
difference.
don't,
Sedona.
I don't think, and I think you don't necessarily believe, Fanatic, but maybe I'm wrong. That those two things are synonymous, right? There are a lot of people who are who claim to be woke, right? One who are not even leftists, like liberals, right? Who like do performative wokeness, but we won't call them like a leftist, right? They would have politics closer to GSU Gambit, politics closer to you than to me, but they still do all those woke things, right? That's a certain level of like a social behavior, performative social behavior that you and I think, more or less agree tends to be unproductive. So so I wanted to make that distinction, right? And so for me, like as a leftist, I care very much about the material well-being of individuals. So we talk about this on the show all the time, right? Like I'm talking about like massive like investments by the government into communities to change those economic outcomes, right? You know I am.
Wait,
right?
communities of color or specifically black people?
Of course, I'm talking about black. Of course, I'm talking about all of them, right? I'm talking
Where
about.
are we?
I'm talking about targeted
be both.
programs. Oh, no. I'm talking about targeted programs. I'm talking about lots of things, right? So I'm talking about like general things for general citizenry, right? But like raising the pay, right, for everyone, right? Like raising the minimum wage, right? But also targeted programs for different communities, because different communities have different needs. I got you. I got all that stuff, right?
He can't focus on just black folks. He got to talk about other people of color.
Yes,
and just
because I'm a
different
citizen of the
communities,
motherfucking
everybody,
world, man. Shut up.
Yeah. Black man first. No, I would say you're a black man first, but you're a leftist first. You're a leftist, then a black man.
Okay.
Because white leftists. Okay, go ahead.
But okay, but come on. Do you? All right, maybe I shouldn't get into that. The point is that you're talking about like leftists want to shortcut this, right? So I'm not gonna speak for Water Kai. I don't know if Water Kai counts himself as a leftist, right? Or maybe Taj. I don't know if they call themselves a leftist. No, okay, great. So maybe it's just me, right? Maybe I'm the only enlightened one here. So
We're trying to educate you, buddy.
No, I'm a progressive. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not right. I'm not left.
So if it's just me, then right, then I'm not trying to shortcut anything, right? Like I want to do that hard work. We talk about that hard work being done all the time, right? I'm talking about we have a tool, right? A tool that exists outside. Even if we change the economic conditions of African Americans, right? That doesn't mean that racism disappears, correct? Like you would agree with that. Okay,
sure.
Right?
Yeah,
So then,
because racism isn't the real problem.
So
personal racism isn't the big problem. It's systemic racism, right?
Exactly.
I don't care if the white guy that works with me is racist at all. I care about the pressure that he can exert with that racism.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that point. 100% I agree.
And lastly, just to be clear, I do think that racism will disappear if we get rid of the systemic racism, and here's why: because once you have black people and white people intermingling more. Black men, instead of white flight happening, you have black people living in white neighborhoods. Now you have white
You
women
got
who are
black men
sleeping
living in
with
white women's
black
houses.
men. Right, exactly. And so now that you have that kind of thing happening more cohesively, more more frequently, now you're having more mixed children. Yes, maybe the racist white men that are like upset that their white women are sleeping with black men, like they're going to be there in the very beginning. But then over time, their children and so on and so forth, society becomes more normalized to like the thing where it's not like something we're doing behind closed door while I'm holding her hand while he's stretching her out. It's more like an actual relationship, like in the public that the rest of the world can.
Stop, please! You're scaring the white
This is
people.
amazing.
You're
This is amazing.
scaring the
Because
white
this is
people.
how AI works, right? Like we
Bro,
take
like-
in inputs, and then
You're
those inputs
triggering
to
white replacement.
Okay, yeah. Input a black semen, output mixed babies.
Stop
Got
it.
it. No,
Stop it.
no,
But
I get it. Look,
GSU
listen,
is bringing up a great point. Is
Look,
God bless
that
you, sir,
this
but
is
stop it.
this is exactly what it means to try to shortcut the system. Well, as opposed to doing the hard work first, you want to get the outcome and then do the work. It doesn't work that way. You can't project false realities and then try to get that reality to match to that. You have to get the reality to change so that the outcome will change. The problem with leftists is that what they want is, as opposed to equal justice or equal representation, they want to have cosmic justice and cosmic representation, as opposed to having somebody show up and put in the same amount of work, regardless of skin color, sex, or other experience, and be able to be elevated to a position that their work and ethic
sorry.
put them into it. But what you guys want to do is you want to just take everybody and elevate them to the same level, regardless of whether or not they put in the work to get there.
Okay, so that's absolutely not what
cosmic
leftist.
justice, dog. Yo, these are bars.
That absolutely
Jesus
isn't what
Christ.
leftist want, but whatever, right? And I'll let in Taj like right after I'm done. I swear to God, you're next, right? So that's not exactly what leftists want at all. So whatever, I'm ignoring that.
No.
But fuck, what was the last thing I was saying to
He was talking about
Maddie?
cosmic justice, and you were going to
No,
agree
because
with that.
I was talking about like if we fix the conditions, then that'll actually eradicate the racism. That part.
Yeah. I think that it'll take more, even in an example you gave, right? It's not something that happens overnight, right? Like it still takes cultural work beyond that for these attitudes that have been there for so long, right? You can say that, yeah, well, it's true that like there is like a proportionate number of black CEOs there, right? In the world. But that doesn't mean that people won't automatically stop thinking of CEOs as like majority white, right? Or as presidents as majority white because we had a black president, right? It still takes more cultural work than that. So anyway, so what I'm talking about here, right, in terms of these tools, right? And again, I still don't know what I want with these tools. But like it seems to me that it's not unreasonable that we could design a tool that is reflective of what we want society to be rather than what it is at this current moment.
Cosmic justice.
So, but like I'm not talking about, of course, shortcutting any of that stuff. Absolutely not. You know I'm not.
That's
you know I'm
exactly
not
what
like
it
that.
is.
But what you're
Okay,
asking
whatever.
for? No. I just Prime. I'm not accusing you of
Creating
wanting a
reality.
shortcut. But what you're doing, what you would do in that situation, would actually like cause more harm. And here's why: because once you have this illusion that hey, things are more equitable, things are equal, and so on and so forth, then it renders you less able to identify the actual problems that are facing the society that you need to address and to repair. So, for instance, for a long time, like for most of my life, I swear, as I'm being as genuine as I can, no jokes, no jabs. For most of my life, I was starting to like believe in the nonsense that was being told to me that racism was a thing of the past. It's pretty much over. We're like, we're all like, we're more racially connected than we've ever been. Society is progressing and so on and so forth. I believed all of that with my whole heart. And then as time went on, the more you start educating yourself, the more you start realizing like, no, racism is still here. It just seems like it kind of changed its face a little bit. It seems like now we're just like kind of it's behind closed doors, but the racism never went anywhere. And that is like I think that the reason why they were able to dupe us all, the reason why they were able to fool us all is because they've done all of this performative nonsense. This is not a dig. I'm not trying to make a joke here as I've been doing. I'm saying like I believe genuinely the Democrat Party has done a lot in like doing all these performative things about like, hey, we put a black person in this position. We had Condoleezza Rice, and that was actually under the Republican. But my point being like we've had these people in these positions and that's fixed the issues and yada yada yada, and none of that actually addressed the real problems. And that's why we were able to be duped. So when you change the results and you change like the way people perceive things before you actually change the material conditions, then it makes you feel like, hey, we've done enough. Let's stop. That is literally, as I can't think of a more perfect example of why you would get benign neglect. That's what happened in 1968 when they did the Civil Rights Act and they did the Voting Rights Act. They did all these things, and then they literally came on and said, hey, well, you know what? We've already done enough. Let's not do any more. Now we'll just watch them as we continue to focus on other groups. That's literally what they did. That's how you do that, because you've convinced yourself we did the work already.
Okay. I have a response to you, but let's do that open panel, right?
Sure.
Because we'll just go at it, right?
Oh.
And I think we might have some common grounds to like
Brilliant.
to arrive at here, right? And I think we're plenty of places we could take this conversation. But first, I want to let our friend Taj get the last word on this.
Cool.
Run it.
Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. So I just want to respond to DeAndre, Fnatic, and GSU Gambit. All right. So we can have both. We can have it where we fix real, impactful systemic issues, and we can also have it where we prevent harmful ideas from having too much air online on search filters when we're looking up images and for AI things. It's not going to harm our AI user experience by like if someone were to type in the word criminal or gang or prisoner or something, and there's just like less than like the actual amount of like percentage wise like black people
Cosmic
that are like,
justice.
on those things.
Don't interrupt him. He's gonna mess him up. Let me go, Taj.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm so worried about a lag. Yeah, so like the way I see it, right? Like say like if we like made like not preventing all the way, but just like filters to make these things less prevalent. I think that like these filters are helpful the same way where like all right, so the same way where like if someone saw like blackface and then they saw the first real life black person in a courtroom when they're a jury member, they're gonna have like negative ideas off the jump with that like person that's like defending themselves like to the jury in a court case. The same way I don't want these pictures, like I don't want like images that don't have filters to like harmfully like impact the public perception of marginalized groups, if that makes any sort of sense at all. So the same way, like if I were to type in like gang member or criminal, and say if I'm like an impressionable child, like an 8-year-old child or something like that, and I'm doing like a school project or some shit, and like I type in criminal and it's like a bunch of black men, or gang member and it's a bunch of black men and Latino men. I don't want those ideas to like be the first impression of these concepts. And I don't want that for kids who are eventually going to be voting peoples and who are eventually going to be parts of juries. It's a small thing that can compound in ways that we don't necessarily anticipate. So it's more of like a public health thing in the way I see it, versus just like, oh, we can only have we have to impact the real world, and in order for like online search engine results to be like changed in meaningful ways. We can do both at the same time.
Okay. So we'll leave it there, and we'll continue on with our open walk-on panel, like right after this. Okay. This has been great. This has been fantastic, actually. Guys, if you agree, hit that follow button. If you're new here, hit that follow button. Make sure notifications are on, so I'm going live. It is all the time, right? We have these great conversations, or frustrating conversations. I think, depending if you actually worked in the field of AI, it might be very frustrating to you. But we have these conversations all the time. So we'd love for you to join us. So hit that follow button. And make sure notifications are on, so I'm going live. Hit us up on Twitter, Discord. We'll have our open welcome panel where you can join in. TikTok is where you find funny videos for the channel, and YouTube is where you find the VOD. So if you missed anything, hit up our YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. Consider like a super chat. Super chats help channel. Consider all of that. Support this community. Support what we're trying to do. Okay. I'm going to give an outro to all of our great individuals here. But we'll we'll continue from there. So, thank you, Isle, for being here. Isle, much appreciated. You were you didn't anger me too much today, so like it's an improvement. Isle, thank you for coming through, buddy.
It's okay. So we've learned many a thing. We learned the PCNF community endorses docking, and they want shortcuts through AI to get us there. We learned so much. You know, we learned so much. Like the PCNF community supports PrimeCayes with words, but not with money. He needs Republicans to pick up the slack for the channel. We learned that from the very beginning. We still haven't finished that bet for the tier 5 sub train. That didn't happen. We know that. And with guns, the African American community, I think, should keep guns because we don't want to be disadvantaged by people trying to disenfranchise us and take our rights away. And I think we should have our guns to protect ourselves and our communities from harm. And with the AIs, I think that, like I said before, we need to make sure that we do our best to expand the data sets to include legitimate examples of things so that we can have a diversity of things that can appear, but we shouldn't artificially inflate things to where they are at rates that just are not uh, comparable to reality. Like with my example, if there are black stewardesses, we should definitely not exclude them from the data sets. But we can't just go into Photoshop and turn all the white stewardesses black and then put them back in the data set and pretend that it's 50-50 if it's not that way. Okay, that's basically what I think. We should expand them as wide as they can, but we can't artificially inflate them. That's my thing.
Isle is so brave, right? Against blackface.
brave.
Great. No digital blackface for Isle, right? Put it down. Thank you, Isle.
I wouldn't do that.
Thank you for that. Pace, thanks for coming through, right? Being the lone conservative voice in a wilderness of liberal nonsense, right? I do appreciate you, friend, for being a part of this. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. You guys can always follow me on the Story of America podcast, Story of America with Payson Williams. I have to say, this episode of here really, really made me appreciate Fanatics' quick punches at the leftist lunacy. Had me rolling every single time. But I will say this. Um, I, in, in closing to our last little talking point there, uh, Prime's the leftist ideal world was already given to us in a little known blockbuster called Avengers Age of Ultron. And if they continue going on with their idea of cosmic justice, we'll be dealt something worse than Ultron in the future. So stop supporting the cosmic justice of the leftists and start supporting reality. Change the reality, change the AI.
Leftists will be the cause of the robot apocalypse. Checks out, right? Makes sense. Thanks so much.
For sure.
They'll be the cause of the regular apocalypse for that matter.
So,
Oh man, you guys are great. So let's go to our friend Fanatic. Fanatic, thank you so much. Your input is always so much fun, right? So much appreciated, right? Like now the output you're giving me because of your trash input is less than ideal, but I do appreciate your input. So
Listen.
thanks so much, friend.
My output is always ridiculous. I have never been hired to stretch out somebody's wife and the couple have been left unsatisfied. My output is absolutely A100. What I will say, as far as the last topic is concerned, I can't think that a better point was made than the fact that yes, there does seem like there's always this goal of like let's fix the optical stuff. Let's go ahead and like change the face. Let's make sure that one of our justices is black. Let's make sure that we're going to name these streets after these people. Let's make sure that we're going to say that these Black Lives Matter. Let's do all the things we can to make them feel loved and heard and so on and so forth. But when it comes to the tangibles, let's go ahead and, I mean, one of my favorite things was, if we remember, on the WikiLeaks, they had hacked the DNC, and they said that the DNC told them, listen to Black Lives Matter, but don't actually promise them anything. Do y'all remember that? That was a WikiLeaks. Hey, you can
Really?
listen to them, but don't promise them anything. I wish if
It was a
someone can
Hillary
find me
Clinton
that.
thing, right? I think that was for
Mhm.
Hillary Clinton's emails. If
Mhm.
I'm not mistaken, yeah, that was
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah. So it's not
Yeah,
this stuff
virtually
isn't stuff
everything
that we're
was
just making up. So when you learn about that and you learn about benign neglect and you learn all that stuff, that's what pisses me off when we start talking about like, oh yeah, let's fix it AI. I don't like the results. I don't like the way it looks. Like I don't care about none of that stuff. Give us the tangibles. We'll see the cessation of the degradation of our culture. We'll see, because we've always seen the black middle class family is not having the same results as the as the poverty stricken families, right? We're seeing that they have better college graduation. We're seeing that the home ownership rates. We're seeing that the wealth difference from the middle class. All of those things, like generational wealth, all those things are way better. Give us the tangibles, and we'll give you the results. Give us the tangibles. And I don't care about like AIs and all the data sets and Google seems racist. I don't care about any of your virtue signaling. I don't care about none of it. I hope Andrew Yang's party actually does something. Give us tangibles or get the freak out of my face.
And I don't think I said it previously, but guys, in case you're new, the stream doesn't end. We have the open panel after this. Not sure what's the previously, but so stick around. We are giving outro to these individuals, but we do have more content. Okay. So let's go to Mordecai, please.
The chat, I don't know if I'm Asian. Live with it. The AI is an aggregate of what everybody believes and is putting into the search engine. So bottom line, this is what we're going to get. This is what we think of as people. We didn't think Trump was going to win, but the beliefs of actual people that wouldn't even admit to voting for Trump or doing things like voting against or for abortion would even be a thing. You would think it was common knowledge nobody would vote for Trump, nobody would want abortion to go away. And so the AI is showing us the truth that we don't want to know. Accept it and enjoy it. And once it hits 4chan, you'll see the true depths of human depravity.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, next, our friend Chieshu Gambit. Thank you, Chieshu, as always, for coming through, being part of what we're doing. Right, we don't get to see you very often, but like it's a treat every single time. So, seriously, thanks.
Cool, appreciate it. Yeah, so terms have become elastic, so I had to Google this to make sure what y'all were suggesting was what I thought it was. The definition of propaganda is information, especially biased or misleading in nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. And I think what y'all want AI to be is propaganda, and I'm like inherently against propaganda. So the fact that it's showing the realities of our material world, I don't like that, the fact that our material world is what it is, but I feel like that fire, like Fanatic was saying, I feel like that fire is what will lead us to being a better Black people, better America, blah blah blah. So I don't want to like cessate that fire that's in us when we look at the reality and we see that we want to change it, versus where we see y'all's version of cosmic justice and then it enables us to be more comfortable with what's happening. So yeah, I definitely think there was some strong points made there. Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, happy to be here always. This was dope. This was like a really, really dope panel. I'm very happy I made it.
Someone said that this was gonna be chill. We had chill topics, right? I know.
It was more chill. It was more chill though. Like we let people finish.
No,
I knew this was the nutty concept. Even Guns wasn't going to be as deep as this.
Yeah.
But GSU Gambit, right? Like, so the leftists failed, right? They failed us. But like,
yeah, it's part of Andrew Yang.
But look, no, in terms of like that bet you were talking about. Yeah, like the leftists have failed.
Yeah.
You have proved your superiority, and as way of proving that, right? Wouldn't it be great if you gifted those 50 subs any which way, right? Like to prove the superiority of a non-leftist. Wouldn't it be great if you supported the channel any which way, right? That'd be amazing. Maybe
that would be.
With the
That
50
would
subs. 50 subs, that would be amazing.
And
All
I'm
right,
also
let's go.
accepting George Let's Go on bets.
Let's go to our friend Taj. Taj, thank you so much for coming through. I missed having 50 subs. He was actually serious. Thank you. Thank you,
no problem.
GSU Gambit. It actually means a lot, dude. Like I can't tell you how much. That's a huge help. That's a huge help to the community. Thank you so much.
No problem.
208 subs total for my man. Well, not Fanatic. GSU. Thank you for that. Oh, someone else is getting
He
okay,
shot
1,500
rocket
bits.
launchers
100
and
bits. Yeah, if we
yeah,
get
he
another,
shot.
if we another donation, right? In terms of bits or gift subs or anything like that, right? Sub that'll help us get to a hype train. We just need one more person. So support the channel, help us out. Sub to hype train, gift bits or gift subs. And we'll I think we'll get to level 5 instantly. But thank you so much, Shiishu. All right. Let's go to our friend.
This man shot ICBMs. I shot a Derringer.
Oh, okay. So we need one more person. Thank you so much. All right, Taj, thanks for coming through. Thanks for being a part. Much appreciated, friend, for coming through. We need to have more of you here because I like the way your mind works.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate being invited back here. The topics today were actually really good. I did not expect the second one to be as interesting and as much of a deep dive as it was, and I appreciate you guys all for giving the input. I'll end on these things. Black gun ownership is base. I think that our demographic probably has the most justifiable reason to own guns, I think, out of other demographics of the United States. And also, I understand everybody's points regarding the AI thing. There are good arguments on both sides. Both sides had good arguments. But yeah, I'm gonna end it on the statement of saying that the trapper won't miss. All Black Americans must be strapped any way possible. All right. So if you guys got a sword, you gotta like that. All right. So you gotta stay strapped at all times.
Don't hurt the
That's my closing
webcam.
statement.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for that. I appreciate that, and I'm sure our friend DeAndre Pace
Yeah, it's no problem.
appreciates that as well. So, thank you all.
I feel like he's more of a katana guy.
Are you more of a katana guy or like a scimitar?
I have 10 katanas, three cavalry sabers,
10 katanas?
and a wall of broadswords. Mostly standard two-hand broadswords, but I do have a couple of one-handed short swords and one claymore. And sitting on my bookshelf back there is my battle axe.
Oh,
Nice.
oh, you got your background on.
I was just gonna ask about battle axe.
Tell us that into the future. Okay. Thanks so much. This has been interesting. We know, right, not to fuck with Pace or Taj, right?
I
Base
would.
strap.
Only one can survive.
So we are going to continue on with our open walk-on panel right after this. Anyone here can join us. But if not, that's okay. Thanks for your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion, my community. I really appreciate it just as much as I do. Thank you so much. Before we leave, just you and Fanatic, I know you guys need a little bit of a break, but hurry back so we can get those other people in.
Cool.
We're gonna have that conversation about AI, and have a deeper discussion there. Okay. So
Cool.
thank you so much. All right, bye guys.
I'll be back.
I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna need a little bit more time than that, but I will be back. I promise.
Gotcha.